support Project 2025?
I haven't looked all that deeply at Project 2025, but it seems that Democrats on this committee, sort of like Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, if they say Project 2025 enough, their presidential candidate becomes alive.
Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. I do appreciate you clicking on the video to watch it. And since you are here, I would love it if you would just take one more second and one more click to hit that subscribe button and just help me to grow this channel. And of course, to those of you that are returning, welcome back. You know I appreciate you coming back, watching the videos, engaging in the conversations. And I would love it if you would just make sure that you are also subscribed. So I'm sure by now you have seen at least some of the clips going around social media of Ben Shapiro testifying in Congress about this investigation into the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, or GARM. Now, if you don't know what GARM is, at least according to Google, it says it's a cross-industry initiative that aims to improve digital safety and remove harmful online content. GARM is a part of the World Federation of Advertisers, or the WFA, and was formed in 2019. The alliance includes advertisers, agencies, media companies, platforms, industry organizations, advertising technology solution providers, and independent brand safety providers. According to this article from the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro described GARM as part of a network of global elites who have created a universal framework full of guidelines and ratings designed to enforce approved narratives and punish disproved ones. And just to understand what this hearing was about, even though we will get into the more entertaining aspects of what happened in just a minute, according to a report from the House Judiciary Committee, it says a congressional investigation has uncovered overt political bias in the leadership of an advertising coalition, GARM, that's being used to control online speech, according to a House Judiciary Committee report released on Wednesday ahead of a hearing on whether advertisers are violating federal competition laws. The report on the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, or GARM, accuses the group of attempting to influence what content appears online by starving disfavored content or even entire platforms of advertising dollars needed to survive. Internal emails obtained by the committee found that GARM's leadership strategized how to use the coalition against news outlets, including the Daily Wire, with opposing views from its leadership. GARM and its members discussed a strategy of blocking certain news outlets like Fox News, the Daily Wire, and Breitbart News, the report states, pointing to an email from a top executive associated with the coalition stating that he hated their ideology and BS. One of the lead organizations in the coalition, Group M, the world's largest media buying agency, admits in emails that the Daily Wire is on our global high-risk exclusion list, categorized as conspiracy theories. And I will link that report in the description box if you want to go and read more of what this entire hearing was about. But I just wanted to kind of set things up before we get into the more fascinating aspects of how this all played out. But it is my understanding that an alliance like this would really be beneficial in helping advertisers and businesses and companies and whoever else, a wide variety of people that rely on ad campaigns to fund their cause or to fund their company or, anything like that, that it would be beneficial to make sure that there are certain safety standards being met so that these ads are not being placed on platforms that truly promote harmful content. But the question then becomes, what is that standard of safety? What exactly does that mean, and who is deciding what that means?
So, what are the brand safety standards that GARM uses? The standards begin with inarguable things that we've heard from the other witnesses, like preventing distribution of child sexual abuse material or stopping terrorism. But GARM doesn't draw the line at what is criminal, abusive, or dangerous. Their standards also include restrictions on hate speech, harassment, misinformation, or my personal favorite, insensitive, irresponsible, and harmful treatment of debated, sensitive social issues. Those criteria are highly subjective in theory, and they are purely partisan in practice.
So yes, obviously there are certain safety standards that we can all agree on based on the kind of material that is being offered on certain platforms, and we don't want that ad money or, advertisers to be associated with those things. But that is not where the line of safety is drawn at. Now it's based on ideology. Now it's based on political affiliation. And as much as these people try to tell us that they are apolitical or they are not biased in any way, as you go throughout this hearing, you find out that they really can't identify anybody on the conservative side of the aisle or that has a conservative platform to fall within their safety standards.
What conservative sites are considered brand safe, according to your metrics? Name me like 1, 2, 5.
Fox?
Fox News.
Sure.
Fox News online or TV?
Both.
Okay. What are any other sites?
I don't have the full definition of what you would consider conservative versus progressive. Like I said, there's 600,000 different sites that are listed in those, and the vast majority of those are illegal.
Right, they're public, so I would assume that you have access to that just as much as I do, correct?
Sure.
So sites like John Stossel's website, that's a mandatory exclude, PragerU, The Federalist, Town Hall, Breitbart, Daily Caller, Newsmax, Washington Examiner, One American News, TuckerCarlson.com, those are all on the mandatory exclusion list?
I'm not sure which sites are and are not on there, but we're happy to get back to you.
Well, I mean, I would assume that you didn't just wake up out of bed and pop up into a congressional hearing today, correct? You prepared for this?
Yes, sir.
Did you, and this was not part of your preparation for a hearing today in front of this committee to defend the actions of these entities and organizations? You never thought, and your team never thought to look at and examine what sites were considered okay and not?
I think that's an important question to ask because they're there to defend themselves as not being biased, as not being political. So it would benefit them to show up at this hearing with proof to show that they have an equal and balanced approach to news and commentary platforms on both sides of the political aisle. And of course, the question is, how does this impact free speech? Because we can hear everybody already chiming in to say, well, these are private companies. Obviously, they are allowed to make their decisions. They are allowed to do whatever they want with their company and to determine who they want to give advertising dollars to, which of course is true. What we are finding more and more is that when we have a government administration that is anti-free speech, but they know they can't directly violate that right by law, they work in conjunction with these companies to heavily squelch certain messages and elevate others that just happen to align with their political messaging, ideology and narrative.
So, Mr. Shapiro, do you have any concerns with CISA's collaboration with GARM and the impact that has on censorship?
And this is where I think my chief concern lies, is in context, formal and informal, between government actors and groups like GARM and their third-party contractors to define standards that act as essentially a cutout for violations of free speech. If the government were to directly do this, it would clearly be illegal. If the government instead puts pressure on private companies to do it, then that should also traditionally be illegal.
This has basically become a workaround to indirectly affect our speech without it coming directly from the government. So they work with these companies to say that, we do believe in free speech, but if you promote certain messages or political ideologies, we are going to fine you or punish you, or we are going to incentivize you, on the flip side of it, we're going to incentivize you to push certain political ideologies and messaging that we approve of. And this is where the danger comes from government becoming too involved in private businesses. And we saw a lot of this happening during COVID when the government used a crisis to force private businesses to push the things that they wanted, which were mask mandates, which were vaccine mandates, even using our education system and our children's class time as leverage to force more people to go along with what they wanted. I know everybody is going to start saying, well, COVID was based on health and safety. This was a crisis. But as we have heard more and more from leftist activists, they want us to believe that speech is dangerous, that ideas are harmful, and that these things need to fall under that same category. So they are using the same tactics by labeling information that they don't want you to hear as unsafe and dangerous. What I appreciate about Ben Shapiro going to Congress and testifying on this issue is the fact that he's doing it more so on behalf of smaller businesses and smaller platforms and people that are trying to grow in this space. People like myself that understand that my channel is heavily being squished by YouTube and probably is not going to grow very quickly because I know that YouTube doesn't appreciate the things that I say. But he is trying to speak on behalf of people that want to get into this space and knows that if they are not pushing the right messages, we are not going to be given the same opportunity as people who push the right messaging. He's actually trying to bring back equal opportunity in its truest form, in the way that we actually hold it as a fundamental belief in America. But this was the exchange that really got the internet's attention. So after actually having some productive conversation about the relevant subject matter, Eric Swalwell decided to jump in with his own hearing, apparently, and turn the meeting toward Democrats' new favorite boogeyman, which is Project 2025. And we're going to listen to this exchange and just remember that this is the same hearing where we are supposed to be discussing government collusion with private companies and this potential discrimination against specific platforms because they have different views than Democrats, because diversity, am I right? But for some reason, this nuclear scientist thought he'd be some kind of hero by attempting to make it seem like conservatives are far more aware of Project 2025 than we're really saying. In other words, that despite the fact that they're being dishonest about this being some kind of official playbook for President Trump, they want their base to believe that it's us being dishonest about wanting this to be the official manual of the next Republican president. So as we saw in the opening clip, Eric asked Ben if he supports Project 2025, and Ben mocks this guy's attempt to use this talking point to revive the excitement for their current barely alive candidate. So let's just listen to how this conversation proceeded.
You probably want less bureaucracy, right?
I do.
I want less bureaucracy. You want more efficiency.
I do.
I want more efficiency. You want taxpayer money spent wisely.
I do. Congrats on becoming a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents would be proud. Mass deportations, do you support that part?
I support the deportation of any illegal immigrant who's in the United States who is not of benefit to the generalized American public.
So if they're picking agriculture that puts food on the tables of everyday Americans, they've never committed a crime inside the United States, they didn't come across with documents, should they be deported?
If they have not paid taxes and if their draw on the taxpayer benefits are larger than the contribution they are making to the economy, or if they're involved in criminal activity, they should be deported.
Before we go any further, I think it's wild that Eric Swalwell specifically said if they have not committed a crime in the United States, as in they might be any kind of criminal from, somebody that has just committed petty theft in their country or an all-out terrorist, but if they haven't committed anything in our country yet, then we shouldn't get rid of them. Make that make sense.
Measure that.
The same way that the IRS measures my income every year. It seems like if the IRS can track down every aspect of every receipt that I've ever submitted, and
So
they
if
can
they
do
were
so for
willing to
hundreds of
pay-
millions of other Americans, they can do that for illegal immigrants as well, except for the fact that no one knows how many are in the country thanks to this administration.
So you would be cool with creating a system where they could pay those taxes if they wanted to and then stay and work and put food on our table?
It depends on how long it would take for them to pay the taxes, and they would also have to go presumably to the back of the line, although I'm not sure why I'm testifying about immigration policy at this point.
Well, let me tell you why you're testifying about immigration policy at this point, Ben. First of all, because Eric Swalwell is an idiot, but he's trying to pin all of these extreme talking points that Democrats have pinned on Project 2025, or at least inflated about Project 2025, even though I'm sure that none of them have read it, and I guarantee Eric Swalwell hasn't read it. But the funny thing is, I think Eric thought he was going to bring this up and prove that conservatives are heartless and racist and xenophobic, and that we don't have any good reason to want to deport illegal immigrants back to their country other than them being a certain skin color. But what he did by bringing up this subject and many others that he goes on to touch on about Project 2025 in this rant is he exposed a wider audience, probably many who are watching from the Democrat side of the aisle. He gave them the opportunity to hear the reasonable arguments as to what the conservative argument for legal immigration is, and highlighted how challenging it will be to clean this mess up thanks to the Biden administration. So we'll listen to about another minute.
How about banning the abortion pill? That's part of Project 2025. Do you support that part?
I think that that's a state-by-state issue on a personal level. I'm
just asking you.
Sure, I'm a fully pro-life person, which means that I'm not in favor of the distribution of the abortion pill.
So what he's trying to do here, of course, is make it seem like Ben Shapiro is representative of all conservatives and what we think and what we believe, even though I guarantee most conservatives are pro-life, but he thinks that if we have this belief on a personal level, then this is going to be an indicator that we want to ban abortion at a federal level, that we want Trump to enact this from the White House, when all of us have repeatedly said, yes, we are pro-life. Ideally, yes, this should not be something that is happening in our country at all, especially when life is a protected fundamental right by our Constitution. But we will keep it in the hands of the states. And he is trying to get Ben to admit that we actually want Trump to bring the hammer down, should he win the presidency, bring the hammer down on this issue. And it's just not true.
What about that part?
I am in favor of traditional marriage between a man and a woman, and I'm perfectly fine with anyone having any sort of voluntary sexual arrangement they seek. That's a different thing from whether the government should attach benefits to that personal relationship.
But you think it's a sin to have same-sex marriage?
I mean, I'm confused. Are you asking me as a religious Jew what I think about biblically?
I'm just asking, is it a sin to be gay?
Is it a sin to be gay? I mean, how long do we have here? 2 minutes? I mean, if the basic idea is that sexual orientation is up for government regulation, I'm not in favor of the government regulating the private consenting sexual activity of adults. That is a different thing, once again, from whether the government ought to engage in actual benefits for particular sexual arrangements that adults make.
But again, just you to me, is it a sin or not?
From a religious Jewish perspective, orientation is not a sin, but activity is. That's also the same perspective of most major religions, so far as I'm aware.
So I think what Eric is trying to do here, he's trying to make it seem like if we believe that being gay is a sin on a religious level, that this is just another thing that we're going to demand of Trump to regulate on a federal level from the White House. And not just whether or not gay people should be able to get married, but whether or not they can be publicly gay at all. It's almost like they think that we would enact policies similar to how being gay is handled in places like, shall we say, Gaza, where because they believe being gay is a sin, they will kill you for simply existing. But Swalwell doesn't seem to be all that concerned about all the LGBTQ groups supporting Palestine, despite the fact that they live by the very public policies that they treat gay people in the exact way that they are terrified Republicans are going to do in this country, but that we never have, that we've never said that we have repeatedly condemned these activities that are happening in other countries, yet their own party and their own LGBTQ communities are cheering more for these countries than they are about the fact that nobody here really cares what you do in your bedroom. But again, Ben is able to point out that despite the fear-mongering that Eric Swalwell is trying to promote, in that, you know, Trump plans to ban abortion, which he doesn't, or punish gay relationships, which he doesn't, that in reality, the plan is to keep abortion in the hands of the states, and no one is going to ban being gay. You can just look at the situation with the Don't Say Gay bill, where they made it seem like if you were a gay person living in Florida, you would be hunted down and threatened just for saying the word gay or being openly gay in some way, and none of that has ever happened. So Swalwell is trying to, and failing miserably, she's trying to carry that same level of fear into this issue, even though conservatives have consistently proven that we're not doing these things and have no interest in doing these things. And he really tried to drive the point home by bringing up a past tweet of Ben Shapiro's where he is talking about this issue, and it's quite amusing to watch.
Because we found some receipts. You did say, I think homosexual activity is a sin.
Yes, I'm a religious
I'm
Jew,
sure
that's true.
There's a genetic component.
You found me out.
Orientation. But the view of all religious people I know has always been that sexual behavior is something that is up to you. And you said, I may have a desire to sleep with many women, but I do not.
I agree with me. Yes, that's true.
It's just fascinating to watch someone this dumb try to go toe-to-toe with Ben Shapiro intellectually, because there are very few people that could keep up with Ben Shapiro, and Eric falls pretty much at the bottom of that list. But even though it would have been understandable if Ben had steered the conversation away from this because it had nothing to do with the hearing that they were called into, I'm glad that he didn't, because the unintended consequence was that, again, more Democrat voters were able to hear the reasonable positions from the other side of the aisle. The very people that they're told to shut down and not listen to at all because they'll die if they hear one word from a conservative, and not only hear another perspective, but to emerge from hearing from another perspective without so much as a scratch on them. But they're able to hear that these positions are very reasonably based and that there is a lot of thought that has gone into them, and that this isn't about, you know, deporting people based on skin color or denying people human rights or whatever the talking point is. And there are benefits versus consequences that have to be weighed out in the things that we promote and the things that we allow. And that having a conversation about these things is not going to kill you. And the last few seconds were truly spectacular because it ended with an amazing comment by Senator McClintock.
You know, you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater, and that's a restriction on speech, as you have recognized before, but you can yell theater in a crowded fire, and you all can continue to do that all you want, and we'll just waste the American people's time.
Gentleman's time has expired, and I remind him of the first rule of holes. When you're in one, stop digging.
So I think it goes without saying that everybody felt really awkward about that exchange, that it was pretty much indefensible. There's no way to find any point to it whatsoever. But again, I'm glad that Ben Shapiro engaged. He engaged respectfully. They even had a couple of chuckles between them, which I think laughter often, breaks down those barriers and reminds people that we are human beings. But he accomplished nothing other than to, again, expose the people that are terrified of this Project 2025 talking point, expose them to the reasonable positions that conservatives have. And it's important to remember that, yes, Project 2025 came from a conservative think tank. So it's not going to be the official playbook of any president, but there are going to be similarities because there is a similar belief system on a lot of things. So just because, Trump is for something or Ben Shapiro is for something that aligns with and just happens to be in Project 2025 does not mean it's an official endorsement of that manual, of that playbook, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I would love to hear all of your thoughts on this in the comments below. Please be sure to hit that like button. Make sure that you are subscribed. Keep it real, guys, and I will see you in the next one.